Dub Nation is happy, and that includes our next guest, Natalie, the hoopstress herself. Queen of NBA Twitter is here with us. One of the queens of NBA Twitter, one of them. And unabashed Steph Curry supporter. And that puts it, that's putting it kindly, right? All of that was music to your ears. You didn't see anything that you didn't already know last night with Steph going for 18 in the fourth quarter and the Warriors showing their championship DNA. But what were you reminded of watching your Warriors grind out that game against the Grizzlies last night?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes playoff games are just ugly, right? And I think people forget that. So I saw like a lot of people during the game on Twitter, oh, it's over. The Warriors aren't going to win. And I was like, what? You know, I was just sort of annoyed because I'm just like, are y'all forgetting who this team is? And on top of this, Steph is kind of like, it's underrated, but he's sort of like a king of the fourth quarters. Like, it's not just last night, but in general, he has so many big second half and fourth quarter moments throughout the playoffs. And so last night he went off. He did it by way of free throws. But I mean, he's right now leading all of the remaining scorers in the playoffs in fourth quarter points, both just in fourth quarters and in the clutch. So I expected that kind of performance from them. And then Draymond with that big defensive stop. This is what I expect from the Warriors.
He's also done a great job defensively on Desmond Bane. Excuse me, Michael, because I got this. This is coming for you. I'm gonna get Natalie to come for you. Thank you. I need Natalie to come for you because the other day, let me give you a little context, Natalie. The other day,
please.
Scottie Pippen gave his all-time starting five and included himself. I respect it. So we just kind of off the cuff gave our all-time starting five, right? And I said, I got Russell, I got LeBron, I got Duncan. Of course, I got MJ, and I got Steph. And I had Holly and Vinny Goodwill talking about, why Steph? Why not Magic? Why not Steph, Natalie? Why not Steph?
Listen,
come on.
Vinny,
no, Natalie
Vincent.
Natalie can tell.
I don't know that I have the right to call him Vinny, but Vincent's a low-key hater, okay? Like, I had this conversation with him. I had this conversation when he was on my podcast, All Nat, because I was like, well, what does Steph have to do in your eyes to pass Magic? Is it a resume thing? Or are you telling me, like, just as a player, he doesn't have, like, he just can't ever pass him? And in his opinion, he can't ever. But I'm like, if Steph gets like matches him in accolades, you don't even think there's a conversation. And I get it, because Magic Johnson's actually my favorite player of all time, but I don't know how you can doubt Steph's resume. So, and I think his defense is going so underrated in this series. And Draymond Green talked about it on The Volume. So you guys on his show, so you guys had a clip of him up, but he mentioned how Steph has really done a good job of taking Bane out of this series. And I think that's actually one of the biggest reasons why the Warriors are up 3-1.
All right. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for being kind to me and going to Vinny instead. I appreciate that. You know, hey, listen, I'll do that with you. Hey, let's just rip on Vinny for a little bit longer. So let me ask you this, Nat. You said a few minutes ago, you know who this team is. Yeah, you know, talking to these people on Twitter. Do you know who this team is? So I want to ask you, who is this team? Because I started looking at the Warriors' run when it really started. 2000. Even before the championship, when you knew they were going to be a problem going forward, like 2014, they lost to the Clippers in a 7-game series. It was really good.
Yeah.
And then they figured it out. And here we go. Here come the Warriors. So are they early run Warriors? Are they should have been last champion Warriors, but KD got hurt and Klay got hurt Warriors? Are they something new? Like, how do you slot them when you just try to put them into the continuum of great Warriors, great teams? Who is this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the third iteration of the Warriors, almost like the Spurs in a way. And I think it's to be determined, because I think when you have players like Jordan Poole and Kuminga on the come up, they're going to ease that transition for Steph, Dre, and Klay. And you could see, like, when trying to close out the Denver series, or even like last night, right? Like, Poole was kind of quiet. So he's not quite there yet, but he's on the rise. He's a budding star. But this team is actually, in my opinion, deeper than the 2015 team that won and the 2016 team that got to the finals and then ultimately lost and won 73 games that year. Steph is not at the front of his prime, and Draymond isn't, or Klay either, but this team is actually deeper in terms of, well, one, you have a second shot creator on the court, and outside of the KD years, you didn't have that, but that's what Jordan Poole is. And so you have someone who can be on the court with Steph at the same time, and you're seeing how someone like having Brunson just on the Mavs is helping Luka do that, right? So the importance of having that second shot creator. And then you also have Poole who can come off the bench. So you have Jordan Poole, you have Otto, who's been amazing and been grabbing boards and getting them all kinds of extra possessions and providing spacing out there, even when his shot isn't falling. But when it is, that's great. You have Jonathan Kuminga, who, even though he's young and raw, is a mismatch, can get to the line, can put pressure on the rim, can be a vertical threat and a lob threat. So they're actually a deeper team. Like those earlier teams, they went about 7 deep. And then after Sean Livingston, it got kind of sketchy. So I think people are underestimating what this next iteration is. I think they have like a title window of 2 to 3 years.
It's crazy that they out rebounding in this series, the best rebounding team in the league this season. But like, Natalie, you're deep in these NBA Twitter streets. So let me ask you this, because we've been talking. Michael and I have been talking about just like, because we out that game. We don't know what y'all talking about nowadays. But you know, Michael and I were talking about just the tenor, the tone and tenor of this series. The code is as a co-star of this series. I wonder what you make of the temperature, the tone, the tenor of the series when it comes to some of the chippiness and some of the physicality. But also, I wonder, take us kind of like in these Twitter streets. What's it been like with Grizzlies Twitter and Warriors Twitter when it comes to, you know, the back and forth over the course of these first 4 games?
Yeah, it's gotten pretty toxic, to be candid. I mean, and I can say that for both fan bases, because I mean, you have doxing going on, which I do not agree with. You have, you know, women being attacked, which is an everything thing. It's an everyday thing on Twitter anyway, just for how dare we talk about sports, right? So you have that happening. So it's getting toxic and people take sports too seriously, but I think it's also even getting a little ridiculous between the teams. So I personally think I don't have a problem with Steve Kerr saying that they broke the code. You had other NBA players agreeing with it. I mean, Matt Barnes got on TV, said he agreed. Richard Jefferson, who, you know, sometimes can be sort of critical of the Warriors, he agreed. And so you have NBA players even kind of co-signing that. So I don't think he went overboard, and they were still careful not to actually use the word dirty. But I mean, it was a reckless play. And I think that's pretty known amongst anyone who's ever hooped before, played at any level. Like, you don't hit someone while they're in the air because they're defenseless. So, I mean, it was just a super reckless play. But I think when it continued on to like trying to frame, and maybe this is my own bias, but when it continues on to trying to frame Jordan Poole as a alluding to like he should be suspended for, you know, incidental contact with Ja or things like that, I just think it's getting too excessive. And I just feel like all these kind of, I don't know, like alluding to the league needs to take a look at things or calling certain things into question after the game. I don't like that. I haven't really seen that before in basketball, and it's new. I don't like it. I think it needs to stop. Like, you win games, you lose games, players get injured. That's a part of NBA playoff basketball, and it's unfortunate because we would like to actually see Ja in the series. I know for a fact Jordan Poole wants Ja in that series. I know Marcus Thompson was on yesterday and like was speaking to y'all about this, but like Poole wants to go at Ja, and you know, so no one wants to see him out hurt. Like, Ja's an electric, exciting player. So I think it's really gotten out of hand. So I just want it to be done. I need the Warriors to end this because it took all the fun out of the series. Like, even with like my Grizzlies mutuals, I'm like, I don't even want to talk to y'all.
Well, listen, you know, and Warriors fans know about injuries in the playoffs. Klay Thompson in that finals that I referenced against the Raptors, really sad to see that. And it took him a long time to get back. Is Klay back? You think Klay is back to where he was?
That's a loaded question, right? I mean, I think he's not the same defensive player. right now. But I don't want to say that he can't still be a good defender. I don't think you're going to see him anymore, guarding those smaller guards or at the point of attack. And that's what we have Andrew for now anyway. But I think when he can get some of the strength back up in that leg and has another season under him, which is typical. Like usually when you have those kind of injuries, it's not usually the first year you come back, but it's the second year. So I think having Klay like on some bigger guys, and I think he can still be like effective. I don't know that he'll be making all defensive teams, but I think his defense will come back. As far as his shooting, not 100% back, but probably like 80 to 85%. And I think that's good for now. I think you're going to still see a Klay game. We're going to probably get a game 6 Klay somewhere, or even if it's not in the game 6, one of those kinds of performances. And he shot really well in the Denver series. So he's just struggling a little bit in this series, but that's also not uncommon for Klay. Like if you go back and you look at their playoff history, he's had series before where he struggled with his shot. So I think the only difference this time is he's pressing a little bit sometimes. Even more for Klay, who is never going to pass the ball. Like he doesn't give up the rock, but I still think the shot selection is even a little extreme for him.
We'd be remiss if we limited your analysis to the Warriors. You are far more than a single team NBA observer.
Thank you.
So anything like when you got your eye on perhaps the next team, looks like it, whether that's the Suns or the Mavericks, or even in the Eastern Conference, like what are some of the other top of mind, top of your list storylines in this NBA playoffs, besides just the parity? We were talking about it a minute ago. It feels as wide open as we can remember in recent memory. The Warriors, one could argue, are the favorites, but they've had their inconsistencies as well.
Yeah.
What else jumps out to you across the playoff landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I think it's the parity. I think every team has had like some really bad games, and then every team, for the most part, has had games where they look dominant. So you don't really know what to think. I think that Suns Mavs series is really interesting. I think the Warriors and the Suns, I think we're actually a really bad matchup for the Suns. But I still think that would be a really good series.
Michael
I just think.
Uh-oh.
Oh, he thinks the Suns got the Warriors.
Michael,
I think the Suns got most people.
I think the Suns got the 96 Bulls, all right? Just so you know. I just want you to understand.
I mean, they're over there attacking him in Dallas, and Chris Paul is getting fouled out and looking, I don't know. So the point guard was struggling a bit. So, Dallas made some adjustments that affected them. It wasn't just like their role players, shooting better, but they targeted Chris Paul and he struggled, and their players were cutting more. So they switched up the way they were running their offense, and it gave the Suns problems. Ayton looked a little more timid than usual. I mean, he was like, you saw some of that bobbling of the ball, some of that stuff in his early years. He wasn't finishing as well. So, I mean, I think the Suns are going to play better when they go back. But I think that series is interesting because Luka is the best player on the floor in that series. And so I think that gives the Mavs a chance to win. I still have the Suns coming out of that probably in 7 games. But I don't think that the Suns are the way that people were making. I understand they had an amazing record, but I don't think they're the team people were making them out to be, like that they're unbeatable or no one could stop them. And then I really love that Celtics Bucks series. Michael, you might be happy to hear this, but I actually think the Celtics are going to make it out the East and get to the finals. And I would love to see a Warriors Celtics finals. I think the further you go in a series, the loss of Chris Middleton is going to become more apparent, especially if the series goes longer. And I think, expecting Drew to be like a 20+ scorer efficiently when he's guarding the opposing team's, wing or best player, that's challenging. So I think you haven't seen a Jason Tatum game, and I expect there to be at least 1 or 2 before this series ends. So especially if he can figure out a way to take advantage of the drop coverage they're putting him in. So I like the Celtics in that series, and I'm really interested in the Sixers because they just made it a series. I like that they tied it up. I actually have the Sixers winning that too. I think the series will look much different if they would have had Embiid from the beginning and you had a vintage Harden game the other night. So who knows?
Okay.
You know what, Nat? I know Michael Smith was just trying to be funny, saying I got the Suns over the '96 Bulls. But let me take this opportunity to say that the '96 Bulls are not my gold standard.
That's true.
I think I've told you
That's
this, Michael.
True. No, he's not lying. He's not lying.
My gold standard is the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, when they won the championship with Durant. I have not seen a better basketball team because now you're bringing Durant, and now you got somebody like, you go throughout history, nobody's got that. Nobody's got Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. You don't have, nobody has that. You can say 3. Somebody's got 3. Nobody's got 4. 4 stars. So I'm going with them as the best team I've ever seen.
I think for sure they're the most talented.
Not like that, though. Not like that.
Yeah, Bulls. Mike? I mean, the Bulls have Michael Jordan, though. It's Michael Jordan.
Right. That's like 2. No, Michael. I was just saying some of those Lakers Celtics teams. Like, I mean, they may not have 4. They may not have the top end talent that you're talking about, but they had 4 stars. You would say, like, if you want to go, Bird, McHale, Parrish, DJ,
and,
so.
And what about Showtime? You don't think that they're one of those teams?
No. Because I think
Steph and Curry on Steph and KD on a different level. I agree with you, Michael. But just you just said nobody had 4. They had 4 dudes.
I mean, like they had 4 stars. They had 4 stars. But we're talking about 4 like bright, shining stars, like bright lights, MVP levels. Like so, you have like Byron Scott was a terrific player, like on the Showtime Lakers. But you got Magic. Okay, Magic. Kareem was at the end.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like 87,
Kareem.
all that? Kareem was at the end.
But he's still. But that's like
where they were, not the name, but where he was in his career.
But where they were at the time. Okay.
When he retired, like a couple years after that, right? So like 89, 88, somewhere he was done. And so
I feel you, but to me that's kind of like when it's a little different, but think about like the later iteration of the Spurs when they beat the Heat, right? Like people will say like Tim Duncan wasn't in his prime, but he's still Tim Duncan, like that's still an all-time great. Yeah. So when it comes time for like the playoffs and when it has to be like a shorter span of games, they can still step up and play like those guys in those moments. And Worthy, big time James. Like, what are we saying?
But I would say Duncan when they won it in 14, like they lost to the Ray Allen shot, then they came back and beat them the next year. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that year Tim Duncan was all NBA. He was like 30, probably in his late 30s. He was all NBA.
I believe it. I don't remember.
He was still doing his thing, whereas Kareem was not an all NBA player at the end of his career.
Hey, Nat, I got one more loaded question. We could literally talk to you all day. We definitely got to do this again.
We could.
I want to ask you about, do you see any parallels? I brought this up the other day, but between the response to Nikola Jokic being back-to-back MVP, joining that now 13-member club as back-to-back MVP, and the response to Steph being the first unanimous MVP. Feels like the negative reaction has kind of gone a little bit too far, almost discrediting the player.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny you're asking me that because I think a lot of people think I'm a Jokic hater, which is so funny because I've put people onto Jokic. But it's definitely a very similar kinds of thing in terms of their games and how people see them and how they talk about them and appreciate it. So I think Jokic is an amazing player. I think he has a conversation for best player in the league. I'm just someone who's a little, maybe it's old school and outdated, but I take into account like the amount of wins you have. And I do think your record should matter. And I'm personally not a fan of giving players who are on 60 teams MVPs. So Embiid would have been my pick, but I do think there is a lot of underlying things going on with Jokic. I think it's a style of play. I think it's that he's international. I think it's that he's white. I think it's a number of things. And so I think a lot of the commentary around him it's like, come on, this man is an incredible player. And I do actually enjoy and appreciate his game. It's in his first MVP season, like Warriors fans often talked a lot about how like the commentary felt very similar to Steph.
Well, you are exceptional in your own right, and we love your game. Bring more of it throughout these playoffs. Let's have you again soon. All right?
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
No, the pleasure was all ours, Natalie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. All righty.
Be good.
Thank you, Natalie. Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.